was the type of man that he was. From this time that of which I speak, right? I had mentioned some of the Jamaica scholars. There were many others, right? My distinct recollection is of one person in particular. Well, three of them I remember very vividly, because there was a guy who went to Kingston College by the name of D. Jones. Brilliant, and he won the Jamaica scholarship in 52, 53. Because what used to happen in those days is that you take the exam in December, right? One year, and the results come out in March the following year. So we say man won the Jamaica scholarship 53. That's when he had taken the exam before. Yeah. And he taught me, right? He went on to be the head of ESO, I think, in Jamaica. Right? And then you had Edward Clark, known as Bumpy Clark. I remember, in fact, when I went to Kingston College a day to take the entrance exam, right? He is the person who gave me the test. It was about 4 days before school started. I had not planned to go to KC at that time. Right? But I was still at prep school and I was just like 10, But I saw one of my friends just before school opened, was a year or so older than me, but we're in the same class at prep school, and he informed me that he was going to KC. And that my other friend Gerald, was going to KC, and that Douglas Moraes was going to Monroe. Right? But my friend was the cousin of Douglas Moraes. My friend, 5 brothers, 5 of them went to KC. Yes?
Positive.
My brothers went your brother went to KC, and then when he told me I was going to KC, I ran through the open land, over the fence. I went to my mother and said, I am not going back to Miss Williams, I'm going to KC. She called my father. My father called Bishop. So my father was the church warden at Christ Church. He was that church warden for 40 odd years and sang in the choir. Bishop used to come and preach there. I knew my father. So he called him. So he said, okay, send down the lad. Went down and took it. It was Bumpy Clark. But Bumpy Clark is one of the most brilliant men this country has produced. And unfortunately died tragically after he took his exams at Cambridge and got a first posthumously. He went swimming in the river and he developed cramps and he drowned. He had passed senior Cambridge, which is CXC. At 13, he got a grade 1. He passed high schools at 15, 16, 17, and 18, and got the Jamaica scholarship at 18. He wasn't eligible for 3 of those years because he was so young. But they didn't know how to, so he just stayed in school. He used to teach me. And he was so bright, he used to teach the class that he was in. Afterwards, a fact of life. And he, right, they were also, Demetrius, Lord Demetrius, he won the Jamaica scholarship. He took 5 points of maths in high schools. There was only one person in Jamaica who could teach it. It was an Englishman who taught at Calabar. And Mr. Forrest paid for him to go and take it. He is now a professor at MIT. Right? Brilliant man, mathematician, physics and chemistry. Right? But there were so many boys at that time. You understand? That were getting 3 and 4 distinctions in high schools and coming 5th and 6th in the school, not in the island, You understand what I'm saying? There was a form once, right, that had 39 boys who took high schools and got 38 passes. You see? But at the same time, as I'm saying, you know, when you look at the track and field teams, you look at the pictures, a lot of those guys, right, became professors and doctors and so on the team. In fact, in 1956, which was the last year that Bishop Gibson was in charge of the school, 56, huh? Of that form, 5 of them was boys. 5 of them, right, with PhDs. And 4 of them, I think, became diplomats, right, of that form. And 2 or 3 became ministers of government. In the 56 thing, they were 56 form the last year that Bishop Gibson was the headmaster. In 57, when Douglas Forrest took over, we won the Manning Cup, and we won also track and field, right? Now Douglas Forrest had been there when he retired in 1971. It was 42 years that he had stayed at KC. And the only time his service was broken is when he went to the Sorbonne to do a degree in French. He was an excellent teacher too. He taught those teachers were so versatile. You know, they taught almost everything because a class don't stop because the teacher don't come to school. You understand? But he continued with KC, as you probably know, and he spent in all 61 years. He retired 61 years, or 62 years he spent at KC. Right? But he had 42 years, and then he came back on staff after he retired in 71 or 72. That is when Dougie retired. But he had been at KC from the very inception. You see? But it's not only Jamaica Scholarship, there are a number of other scholarships that we were winning. Right? Like the ISA Scholarship. You understand? And there's the head boy in 1952 was a guy by the name of Earl Roberts. We used to call him Ratty Roberts. Right? He retired 2 years ago as professor of chemistry at the university. And he actually passed high school 3 times trying to get the scholarship. But these guys were getting like 3 A1s and an A2 with them. And can't get a scholarship. You understand? So they kept taking it until I think he got the ISA scholarship in that time. Of course, there were also a lot of guys, including, for instance, George Becker, Professor George Becker, well known, Professor of Sociology, I'm sorry, G. Beck. And G. Beck told me that he, at the university once, at the common room, he told me that he had a complex when he was at school. This is a PhD in economics, right? He said he had a complex because the boys were so bright, he was afraid to answer a question. He was afraid to answer a question, right? And then there are people who will tell you, including Mr. Justice Carey, that the brightest boy at that time was a guy by the name of Lloyd Hugh, who was too old for the Jamaica Scholarship, because he came to KC when he was like 14, right? And you know, by the time he reached high school, he was too old. He died recently. He was an engineer. He graduated along with Trevor McMorris, was among the first graduates with honors at the university. Among the first graduates. And I mean, of course, people like Professor Gerald Layla, who's one of our leading scientists, right? He also went to Kingston College before his brother Dennis. Dennis is a well-known businessman, son of insurance and fame. But you had also at Kingston College at the time, and you say you have to understand that Bishop Gibson was a martyr, and he was in a way, he was a law unto himself. There was a time when Bishop Gibson was talking, and he said, you know, when I go to the board Then he paused and said, the board? But I am the board. I am the board. You understand? When he walked those things, and I tell you something, he used to wheel a very strong cane for a short man. Very strong cane. I think he was a person who believed in punishment, yeah. Believed in punishment, but believed in, you know, in all the things that helped to build, because this is what he wanted to do, to build. And you see, you find that, you know, so many of the boys who went there in that time, you know, all went on to excel in various fields. Wherever they went, not only locally, but internationally, you know. Now, in my time, the form, for instance, the form that I was in, right, my sixth form, there was Professor Orlando Patterson. He and I took the same subjects. He, of course, is the writer of the book Children of Sisyphus, Freedom, Died Along. He's a professor at Harvard. We're former friends. Carl Stone. Professor Carl Stone came from Munoz and took high schools at KC. And then you had Neville St. Elmo Clark, who was the High Court judge, right? He died, gave the eulogy at his funeral. Carlisle Dunkley, right? And so many others. These guys all won scholarships, right, to university. And then in the year after I left, a boy by the name of Chong won the Centenary Scholarship. He went and did, brilliant boy, he went and did medicine, and he got sick and he died, right? So wherever you looked, right? And let me tell you something. When you see the discipline or the indiscipline in schools, now, you lament, you say to yourself, as Jonathan Swift said, no wise man ever wished to be younger. Because you have so much to look back on. Where, you know, you had to be disciplined. And those teachers, all, right? And you couldn't, it was unheard of for you to be rude to a teacher. No, Bishop Gibson would tell you that this is not what Kingston College was for. It's for Kingston, it's for gentlemen. And incidentally, we are the first school in this country that started to wear a tie. You know? We were wearing ties from then. We never had purple and white ties. But you had to come to school in a tie. You had to come to school. Another thing that Bishop Gibson did, because he was one member of the Legislative Council and all that. You understand? And he had achieved so much. But another thing that he did is that he instituted a system at school that enabled boys of like 14 to come to school. Because normally when you have 14, you know, you're supposed to be looking to take senior Cambridge. Right? But people like the Reverend Billy Hall benefited from that. He had wanted to become headmaster of Kingston College very badly. But he was excluded by virtue of his religion because he was a Plymouth breadwinner or some other thing. But he said he was prepared to convert. He told me that. Right? Because he was captain of the track team in '57, and he broke the record at championship that D.P. Bedford, who was on the 49 team and is one of our really outstanding athletes. Also on that 49 track team was Jack Smith, former Minister of Government, yeah, who had gone to prison for the thing, the money with it, and was government minister. But let me tell you something, right? With this system that he instituted, right, it enabled boys to come there, and if they applied themselves, had to work hard enough, he would skip them. So there's that guy by the name of Peter, who is a surveyor, land surveyor, at a company, Peter and somebody else, right? Peter came to school the same time as me. And yet when I was at school, Peter was teaching. You know, that I could run into, and I just threatened him and make him know. That me and him come to school the same time, we beat him up. They were a bit of mister to me.